The invocation will be led by Vice Mayor Wilson and the pledge by Councilmember Evans.
Heavenly Father, we are again gathered together this evening to perform city business. We ask for your oversight as we continue to keep our community a great place to live, work, and raise a family. We also request that we all continue to work together and everyone in our community as well. Also listen to all the information as we discuss issues that affect our community and that we make an educated and well-informed decisions. We also want to express our thanks for the brief rain that we had this past weekend. It was a welcome shower and continue to request additional rain. Finally, we ask for your protective hand for all our first responders and our military members, their families, wherever they are serving throughout the world. Bring them home safe and sound each and every day at the end of their shift. In the Lord's name, amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mayor Surtee.
Here.
Vice Mayor Wilson.
Here.
Councilmember Barker.
Here.
Councilmember Evans.
Here.
Councilmember Rizzi.
Present.
Councilmember Schroeder.
Here.
Councilmember Struble.
Here.
You have a quorum, Your Honor.
Do we have a motion on the consent agenda?
Your Honor,
Yes.
I move that the consent agenda be accepted as presented.
Second.
Roll call.
Councilmember Schroeder.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilmember Barker.
Yes.
Councilmember Evans.
Yes.
Councilmember Rizzi.
Yes.
Councilmember Struble.
Yes.
Mayor Surtee.
Yes.
Unanimous.
I have a couple proclamations. The first one is for Suicide Prevention Month. Whereas suicide is a major public health issue with more than 123 deaths per day that requires vigilant attention and preventative action, the City of Apache Junction stands in solidarity with our fellow Pinal County cities, school districts, county, community partners, and families to bring awareness to this issue. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among those ages 12 to 18, and the third leading cause of death amongst those aged 18 to 30. And whereas each suicide directly impacts numerous family members, friends, loved ones, and by extension, the entire community, and whereas the City of Apache Junction is committed to raising awareness, providing education and training on suicide prevention and reducing stigma, and whereas the City of Apache Junction is committed to ensuring that those in need have access to services by healthcare providers trained in best practices to reduce suicide risk and to reducing the stigma associated with using behavioral health treatment or losing a loved one to suicide. And whereas the City of Apache Junction encourages anyone thinking of taking their own life seek the assistance they need by calling the National Suicide Hotline at 1-800-273-8255 or text the crisis line at 741-741. Or if you're a teenager, you can call 1-800-248-8336. And whereas no single prevention effort will be sufficient or appropriate for all populations or communities, all are asked to join together and take a stand to help those who are contemplating suicide. And whereas September 1st through the 30th is recognized across the United States as Suicide Prevention Month, and provides the opportunity to educate oneself about warning signs and how best to help those most in need. Now therefore I, Jeff Surtee, Mayor of the City of Apache Junction, do hereby proclaim the month of September 2019 as Suicide Prevention Month in the City of Apache Junction. And who do we have to accept this? Can you tell everybody who you are?
Of course. Braden Biggs, community member here in Apache Junction. This is very personal to me as in 2012 I lost proclamations regarding suicide awareness. One of the things that I've been working on here in Pinal County is ensuring that the suicide prevention information is on the back of all student ID cards, working with the county school superintendent and the Arizona Department of Education to make that happen. Here in the next couple weeks, we're actually going to be taking that to the 15 county school superintendents to get their approval and have their blessing on that. And once the majority or all 15 sign off on that, then we're going to be working with the State Department of Education lobbyists on actually being able to turn this into legislation, similar to what the state of California has passed and the state of Utah has passed, requiring this on the back of all student ID cards for our middle school and high school students. So I do look forward to working with you guys and city staff and making sure that that happens and this valuable information is put out there in our schools. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job, Mr. Biggs, thank you.
I have another one for Constitution Week. Whereas September 17th, 2019 marks the 232nd anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention. And whereas it is fitting and proper to officially recognize this magnificent document and the anniversary of its creation. Whereas it is fitting and proper to officially recognize the patriotic celebrations which will commemorate the occasion. And whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issue of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America, designating September 17th through 23rd as Constitution Week. Now therefore I, Jeff Surdy, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Apache Junction, Arizona, do hereby proclaim the week of September 17th through the 23rd to be Constitution Week in Apache Junction, and ask our citizens to reaffirm the ideals of the framers of the Constitution had in 1787. And do I have Karen Barks and Carol Wilson? I'll come down there for this one.
I don't think we have anywhere to hide on this one. Where are we gonna go?
Just hand this over the rail. No, just talk here, and then you're also being recorded, so you'll be, all of America's gonna see you.
We've been busy in, go ahead, Carol, stay here, that's fine. We've been busy in the schools. Today we were in Desert Vista and we were in Peralta Trail. Yesterday we were in a different school, but we've talked with about 1,000 children this week. And we have a skit called Constitution Capers and a PowerPoint that explains to the 4th, 5th, and 6th graders about the progression between the Revolutionary War and the Constitution. Because a number of times I've had kids, because they're early in their year of 5th grade learning about American history, they'll say, well, what does the Revolutionary War have to do with the Constitution anyway? You know, I've heard that before. They don't understand, so that's what we do there. And we then talk to the 2nd graders and read them a book called We the Kids, which is about the preamble of the Constitution. We're dressed up in colonial garb with mob hats on, and everybody wonders, well, are you really 200 years old? But of course we're not. We hope not anyway. And, but it's very, very interesting. I'm sorry, Mr. Struble, that I wasn't able to make it to your program the other day. I hope it was very successful. The rain prevented me from coming. I was coming down the way to get to my house, and I didn't make it that far yet to your.
You would have been Mary Poppins that day.
What?
You would have been Mary Poppins flying around that day. It was so windy.
That's true. It was very windy that day. I hope you had a good turnout for that. I was intending to come. But everybody should think about the Constitution. Everybody should remember it. People don't know about it. College students don't know about the Constitution. Your children who are in college may not know about the Constitution. In high school, they may not know, even though they have civics class. So please help them. Each and every one of our responsibilities to help to teach them about that and help them remember. Robin just shared with us something about her daughter who's going to college. It was very interesting. What do you know about the Constitution, Mom? I need help. I'm doing a report in history class in college. But she had been out of college, and out of the thinking about it for a long time. So it's very important. That's what we'd like to have you know. And we want to thank you for letting us be here today. Thank you for the proclamation, Mr. Snerding.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any announcements for current events? We'll start with Mr. Struble.
Yeah, I want to talk about the Saturday, we started our Constitution celebration at 3 o'clock and the rain started at 3:15. But we had a great showing. We had, I don't know how many people showed up. It was kind of hard to tell with everybody running around to save their pop-ups and their umbrellas and everything. But we did we had a essay contest in the schools, and we had 2 of the young men come and read theirs. We had, just make sure I get their, Carlos Vega from Arches Academy came. He's a 5th grader, did a great job. And then from the AJ High School, we had Brady Williams. And he did actually, it was over almost a 2.5, 3-page essay, single-spaced, and did an amazing job. We had a lot of singers come down. We had some other speakers that came in, and we finally had to shut down at 4:30 because it was just getting too windy and everything, but had a great showing. We'll have to do that again. So one of the things, last 2 weeks ago, we talked about the convention that we went to with the Arizona Leagues and Cities. Every year, the city puts on a booth. At the last night, there's a gala where all the cities put out what they do and everything. And so this year, we did our booth had a lot of giveaways, and we actually, wasn't it gold that we gave away, Al? I think gold, yeah. That's what everybody thought anyway. But we threw in something different this year to try to get people to remember where Apache Junction is and what we have to offer. So we did a superstition getaway. It was a 3-day, 2-night stay here in Apache Junction. We had Brenda Gifford offered up a 2-night, 3-day stay at her bed and breakfast. We had a golfing from Mountain Brook Golf Club. We had Canyon Lake Cafe, Well Done Grill giveaway, Fat Man's Pizza. We also had Barlene's give away a show, and just a great outpouring from the community for that. So the winner of it was the Vice Mayor of Gila Bend, Clyde Krieger, right? Is that how I say it? Yep. And so he was really excited to be able to come out here and spend a weekend or 2 nights, 3 days, whatever it might be, to get that. So he was really excited about winning. So that's all I got.
Also, I'd like to add to the Daughters of the American Revolution. My 2 daughters and my 2 nephews were the founding members of the first CAR chapter here in Mesa. It was actually in Tempe when we started it. And, kids, you're never really quite sure how they're going to take to an educational type club. My daughters loved it, and they loved Williamsburg. They just thought it was way too hot there and wanted to come home. But there are opportunities out there, and they need to have more advertisement. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, I attended the Constitution event, and yes, even my wife sat there and she gave up in the aspect with the raindrops coming down and wind blowing, and everybody trying to grab a hold of everything to hold anything in place. So next year when you do it, promise no wind and rain.
I prayed, but it didn't do me good. So.
He wasn't listening.
He decided we needed more rain that day.
Robin?
Yeah, I think that something that most of us attended was the Dolce Vita celebration of their wonderful community and the accolades that they've received, and we had a good time talking to folks and watching them celebrate that. So I
Yeah.
enjoyed that.
They're one of the top 50 places to to live in
To
America.
retire, yeah.
Robert?
No.
No fish?
No fish.
Krista?
Just ditto on what's already been said.
And the Daughters of the Revolution remember how important the Second Amendment is to keeping that strong, so. Okay, City Manager's report.
Thank you, Your Honor. Bryant Powell, City Manager. A few items to report. Some recent process improvements related to our Legistar, which is our ability to do our agendas for all of our boards and commissions. One that has popped up you may see for the first time in that area is the Health and Human Services Commission. They are going to have their first non-regular scheduled meeting that we would do during the budget process with Jennifer this next week, Thursday. And what you'll see on that agenda, a couple items that you all had hoped to see during this year: discussion on potential Health and Human Services community outreach and activities. So I'm thrilled to announce that that is something that will be happening, and it's on our Legistar. Matt's showing that now. But Jennifer, thank you for setting that up, and thank you for using the system that's out there that helps everyone in our community see the different boards and commissions we have, and it's completely transparent. The system allows for the same agenda packet that you all have in the same backup that you have that the community also can see as well. And that's not just for council meetings, it's for planning and zoning and for all other boards, city boards and commissions. I'm also very pleased to announce also it's an Arizona Planning Association award for our active transportation plan that you adopted. This was received by Larry Kirch and his staff, and also the J2, the design consultant, for a wonderful active transportation plan. And it's too heavy to pass around, but we're happy to have it. We'll put it out in the lobby area there with our other awards. And this is something that as developers come in and others come in, it's a policy document, it's a planning document that shows your intent on how you want to connect your community with walkability, as well as roads that are very, very accessible and active. So I wanted to make sure you knew about that, and we got that this week. So congratulations, Larry and Sydney and Rudy and all the staff that are involved in planning. And then lastly, we're here tonight. We are very pleased to have with us the Pinal County Attorney, Kent Volkmer, and I'd like to introduce Kent to you, and we're glad to have him come on up. And it's an opportunity for us to get to know his operation a little bit. Kent?
Thank you, I appreciate it. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I appreciate the opportunity to come and speak with you briefly. I'll try not to take too much time, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions you might have. One, I want to just tell you what a wonderful relationship we do have with this community. We work with Joel, we work with Bryant, we work with Al over here taking my picture on a pretty regular basis, obviously Chief Kelly. We continuously and constantly work with the county. But what I really want to, the county works with the county works with the city. But I really want to talk about is something that I think you all need to be aware of that's getting lost in today's day and age. If we go back to about 1994, Arizona's violent crime rate was absolutely out of control. We were considerably above the national average, and quite frankly, it was dangerous. It wasn't safe for police. It wasn't safe for citizenry. If you fast forward, there were some laws and some things that were changed. We are now safer than we've ever been before, and that's at a statewide level. Our violent crime rate is now below the national average. It's only about 40% of where it was 25 years ago, which is the likelihood that a resident is going to be a victim of a violent crime. But more specifically to Pinal County, and this is something I can't take credit for, but I'm very proud of, and I encourage everyone to share this information. Vice Mayor, you in your prayer had mentioned this is a great place to live, work, and play. Pinal County is by far the safest large county in the state of Arizona. And the way that I come to that conclusion is simple data and statistics. You see, the Department of Public Safety and the FBI on a national scale require that all of our various police departments, agencies, sheriff departments, and everyone report all reported crime to them in a uniform crime database. And what happens is it doesn't have to be charged. These are just crimes that are being committed. All of those are reported, and then they're compiled. And they specifically look what are called index crimes. And index crimes are those crimes that the law enforcement community most believe reflects crime in our community. So index crimes include murder, rape, robbery, aggravated assault, home burglary, car theft, human trafficking, arson, those really serious victim crimes. All of those numbers are then reported, and the Arizona Department of Public Safety on an annual basis compiles all of that, and it's available for anybody to see. It's called Arizona Crime Reports, so you can go online and see. It's about a 2-year lag because there's so much data that they have to bring forward, and it's a long way to get to this point. But what happens is it then reports, this is the raw number of index crimes that were reported in your community. So if you take the number of index crimes reported and you compare it to your population, you can get a ratio. And that ratio will tell you how frequent those crimes are actually occurring in our community. And what I can tell you is if you go just a whopping 3 or 4 miles down the road to our neighbors in Maricopa County, their residents are twice as likely as Pinal County residents to be a victim of an index crime. If we go south and we go to Pima County, they're 2.5 times more likely to be a victim of an index crime than our residents here in Pinal County. And a lot of people talk about Prescott and Yuma and all of these other communities. Every one of those communities is more dangerous than us by times and a half, 1.3, 1.4, 1.5 times more likely to be victimized. That's something I think we really need to push because this is a great community. I relocated about 15 years ago. I chose to move into this community. I chose Pinal County. I have 3 young children that I raise here because this is a great place to raise our children, raise our families, and to live. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
You said we already have a great relationship with the PD. Is there anything else that we could be doing to make that even better, or anything that you need or that you can do for us that we are leaving on the table so far?
So I can tell you I have a great relationship with your chief of police. About a year and a half ago, the county decided that victims of crime, particularly crimes of sexual assault and domestic violence, were not being treated fairly by some of our providers. So what had happened is statutorily the county has to pay for that, but what was happening is we were having to take our victims and travel to North Maricopa County. And it was becoming very problematic, and it wasn't fair to victims. It's not quite as big of a deal if you live in AJ to go across the line, but if you live in the Copper Corridor, if you live down in Saddlebrook, if you live in Arizona City, Casa Grande, it can be an hour and a half drive. And what happened is the county decided when they looked at it that we could provide a better service, more cost effective. And what they did is they created their own forensic medical examiner's office where they're doing these evaluations, and they use our FACs. And I can tell you that our AJ Police Department has been a wonderful partner because sometimes it's actually a little more burdensome for them because they have to drive all the way to Santan Valley as opposed to going to some of the local hospitals. But once we sat down and worked with them, we believe we could provide a better service at a more, again, cost-effective rate, and the city has been outstanding. The police department has been outstanding. At this point, we have a great relationship. If there's issues, we have a great dialogue. And at this point, there's nothing better I can really say about our police department. I will tell you we're developing a relationship with Superstition Fire and Medical, I believe. I apologize. I know that they are actively seeking out our assistance and saying, hey, what can we do to be proactive in trying to stop some of these wildfires? You know, there was the Woodbury fire, and they're saying, what can we do to make sure that our residents are safe? So we're working with them to try and sort of give them some guidelines that they can move forward with. You know, Mr. Stern in the city attorney's office, we actually exchange cases. If I have a conflict because of my past job, we can exchange cases, so we do a good job of exchanging cases. At this point, I believe we have a great relationship, and I can speak for me personally. I feel welcome here. I know most of the people here. I've got a great relationship with Mr. Powell as well. So I don't know that I can tell you you're doing anything wrong, but I will give you the invitation, I guess. If there's something that we can do better to serve you, please ask.
Thank you.
I'm an attorney and a politician, so I'll talk a whole lot if you ask questions.
Anyone else have any questions?
Nope.
No? Thank you for making the long drive.
Oh, I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Public hearing, presentation, discussion, public hearing, and consideration of proposed ordinance number 1481, rezoning 2.6 acres. Sydney.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. For the record, my name is Sidney Rice, planner here on staff. Tonight I will be giving a short presentation on Superstar Car Wash, PZ 319. The project is located north of the northwest corner of Baseline Avenue and Ironwood Drive. The current zoning for the project is B1/plan development. The applicant is requesting to amend that plan development to facilitate a car wash on the southern half of that site. Originally, the property owner in 2015 received a site plan approval for an inline retail center, as seen here on the west side, as well as 2 drive-through uses, one on the north and one on the south. As I mentioned, the current applicant before you tonight is requesting that the north side of that development remain the same, but the south be amended to facilitate a car wash use. The proposed project has the building located or situated east-west. There are 3 queuing lanes where customers could pay and then enter the tunnel along the west side and exit through the east side, and then vacuum their vehicles or vice versa. Here we have the perspective elevations. This perspective is from the southeast side looking north, and here we have the traditional 4-sided elevations presented by the architect. The applicant is proposing that the building is a combination of CMU split face and CMU smooth face materials, as well as desert variations colors for the building. On July 17, 2019, the applicant held a formal neighborhood meeting where 9 people attended. The applicant also held 2 non-formal meetings prior to that date to really get the word out and input from the neighbors regarding the project. The city has also sent out public hearing notices noting the time and place and the proposed request before you tonight. Staff has not received any comments from the public that are outstanding or that need to be resolved. With that said, staff and the Planning Commission recommends approval of PZ 319, subject to the conditions of approval found in your staff report and also in the ordinance. That concludes my presentation. I know the attorney that is representing the applicant would also like to speak.
Can I ask a question before he
Sure.
speaks? Would you just back up and show me the site plan again? Where's the driveway?
Councilmember
Coming up.
Barker, the driveway is here located off of Ironwood.
So we have it coming off of Ironwood. We have that lane there, right? A
that's-
decel lane?
That's correct. There's a decel lane proposed there.
Okay.
And that is consistent with the prior approvals as well.
Yeah, I remember us talking about that then. Thank you. I just wanted to be sure we weren't adding more congestion to Ironwood.
Yes, Cindy, can you go back one more? So if I remember correctly, the original, they had kind of a egress and ingress going through the Chevron. So you could also exit out on Baseline Road. Will that still be there?
Councilmember Schroeder, so the original site plan did note this cross-access agreement here noted on the west side. The applicant is proposing to keep that west side entrance and also an additional entrance on the east side.
So they can still cross out.
That's right.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, would the applicant like to speak?
Thank you. He would prefer not to.
Okay.
For your record, unusual for an attorney. My name is Paul Gilbert. My address is 701 North 44th Street, Phoenix. I represent the proposed owner of the car wash. We're here this evening in the posture of a strong staff recommendation of approval. We agree with all the attached stipulations. We have support from the Planning Commission. We've gone the extra mile to meet with neighbors, and the fact that, now when I say this, it'll turn out to be wrong, that's always my luck, but the fact that no neighbors have surfaced at least yet makes me think we did a decent job of meeting with them and explaining the project. So even though I'm paid by the word and I have my usual 10-minute presentation, I'm happy to cut it short, and will rest my case unless you have questions.
Does anyone have any questions?
Yes.
Just have one.
Gail?
At this time, is there any plans on developing the north part as well, or are you just going to develop the south for now?
Good question, Councilwoman, or Mayor Councilwoman Evans. We are only purchasing the south portion. The north portion remains the same. The site plan as now constituted is still in place, so we'll only be doing the south part.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Robin?
When do you see this being built?
Mm-hmm. We hope to have this open for business in about a year.
Okay. And because we were we have this old site plan, and obviously nothing came of it.
Right.
Now we have another site plan. I just was kind of hoping that perhaps we would actually get this.
Well, Mayor and Councilwoman Barker, as hard as we've worked to bring this forward, I can tell you, we're ready to go,
All right, thank you.
surely.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I gotta kind of get back to this entrance over here off Chevron, because Ironwood is a very congested area, there's no question, and it gets pretty crazy. Now, I know that Chevron, they have a car wash. I mean, do you have some sort of agreement that, yeah, feel free to bring your traffic through the parking lot? And
Yes, we Mayor, Councilman Schroeder, we do have an agreement with the Chevron, and as shown on our site plan, let's see, I don't have a marker with me. Andy, can you? All right. Okay, boy, this is asking a lot here. Okay.
I know what you mean.
We have an access point right here going to the south through the Chevron property. There is a written easement agreement to facilitate that. Then we're proposing another access right here that will be right here, go back and forth between the two properties. And I might add, you raised a very good point, because the neighborhood raised it when we met with them. The traffic, we are cognizant of the fact that it's very busy on Ironwood. This use at peak hour times will not produce more traffic than what the old site plan would produce were it to be developed. And then secondly, the car wash is not a destination use. Most of the time people are on their way somewhere else, stop in very quickly, and they're en route to another location. So we don't think we will add any precipitous increase in the traffic or congestion on Ironwood over what's already been approved for the site.
Sure, yeah, I guess mainly because, like, if you go to the exit to the west, I mean, you virtually can drive through the car wash of Chevron if you exit right there.
Yeah.
And, I mean, that's obviously gonna be, they're gonna lose some money on that car wash that Chevron is, and so I'm just curious about how they felt about people. At one point, they're gonna be entering their property to go through, because people are gonna come up the baseline and hang their right or hang their left to get to the light or whatever, instead of just coming all the way back out to Ironwood and hanging their right or left.
Okay.
So I was just curious that, you know, so he's all good with that, huh?
I would just have two responses to that. One, that car wash is not a major part of the operation of the Chevron station.
No.
And secondly, we believe that with the activity we'll generate, we don't compete with the convenience store, we don't sell gas, so we think we're going to generate a lot of activity, particularly with the two cross-access points, to increase the business of the Chevron station, and as far as I've been able to ascertain, they share that assessment with us.
Okay.
Anyone else?
So is this a 3, a 5, a 7, a 9, or a $10 car wash?
All of the above.
Well, Reza, how much you want me to say?
Thank you.
So what's gonna be the hours of operations?
The hours of operation are 7 to 7. 7 to 8. Oh, excuse me. I
And
had
the
that wrong.
car wash is gonna be enclosed in the building, so we don't have to worry about the noise and such, or?
Yeah, there is a tunnel where they go through, and I didn't go into a lot of detail, but we are installing a special sound repression facility that reduces the sound substantially. Indeed, we submitted a copy of a sound study to the staff that indicates we're producing less ambient noise at this car wash facility than would be that is occurring on Ironwood right now.
Less sound than bull riding. Yeah. Okay. Any more questions?
All right, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Any more discussion among the council? This is a public hearing. Would anyone like to speak on this item?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, my name is Robert Pizzorno. I represent the owners of the Chevron station to the south. So I just wanted to, since that discussion came up, I wouldn't normally stand up, but we had worked out the issues with the owner, and we are in communication about finalizing the easement access. And from our perspective, everything's good. Mr. Gilbert talks about getting paid by the word, and so I'm going to throw out my $10 word, which is symbiotic. We view this as a symbiotic relationship, that the car wash will bring in business to our station. So even though we do have a car wash, we recognize that the greater good for our business is actually having this car wash there and bringing those people in. So with that, we have no objection. I did believe we had asked for a continuance, but because we have resolved our issues, we are good with this going forward. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Hearing and seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and ask for a motion.
Your Honor,
Yes.
I move that ordinance number 1481 be read by title only and the reading of the entire ordinance be waived.
Second?
Roll call.
Yes.
Councilmember Evans? Yes. Councilmember Wilson?
Yes.
Councilmember Barker?
Yes.
Councilmember Struble?
Yes.
Councilmember Schroeder?
Yes.
Mayor Surtee?
Yes.
Unanimous, Your Honor.
Your Honor,
We'll read
Read.
ordinance number 1481, an ordinance of the mayor and city council of the city of Apache Junction, Arizona, amending the Apache Junction, Arizona zoning ordinance by amending the zoning district map, city of Apache Junction, Arizona, changing the zoning district classification for the property described in the Plan Development Rezoning Amendment Case PZ-3-19, a request by Andy Holcombs, presented by Buse Gilbert, amending 2.66 acres zoned general commercial plan development, B-1 PD, repealing any conflicting provisions and providing for severability.
Your Honor,
Yes.
I move that ordinance number 1481, as read by the city clerk, be approved.
Second.
Roll call.
Councilmember Barker?
Yes.
Councilmember Struble?
Yes.
Councilmember Evans?
Yes.
Councilmember Rizzi?
Yes.
Councilmember Schroeder?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wilson?
Yes.
Mayor Surtee?
Yes.
Unanimous approval.
Presentation, discussion, public hearing, and consideration of ordinance number 1478, amending city code, creating a public art commission. Heather.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Heather Patel with Development Services. The item before you this evening is the creation of a public art commission. And the item that I have up on the screen, there are two sections of the ordinance that were up for discussion, and some decisions need to be made. So the first portion has to do with the membership and how we break out who will be on the commission. There was some discussion and concern that there are one, maybe two categories that we would have a difficult time filling. We did insert in red up on the screen just a little clause that said, in the event that a professional or a person with an interest in history does not apply for the commission, that we would then move that member up to being a practicing artist. I am very pleased to report that we have received a lot of great applicants, and I don't think that we're going to have an issue filling any of these criteria. So that is being proposed for you this evening. The next section has to do with the duties that the commission will undergo. So there's items A through F are given. What is under discussion is first item G, which in relation to art in public places, and this would be art for city projects. Would the commission be a recommending body to the city council on art, or would they be the deciding body? And then likewise, item F is for the private development. Would the commission be the recommending body or the deciding body? So that needs to be discussed, and then depending on what your response to that is whether or not we need to include an appeal procedure for that. And that procedure is just our standard for other commissions, so there's really nothing to be discussed on that. It's just whether or not we have to insert it in this particular ordinance. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Krista?
So Heather, if the commission is the deciding body, would the council be the appeal process?
That is correct.
If the commission is the recommending body and the council is the deciding body, who is the appeal process?
Okay, so Joel brought this, do you want to speak on that, Joel?
Mayor and members of the council, Councilmember Rizzi, I think as I stated before, if someone had an issue with what council did, they would have to go to Superior Court, and it'd be an arbitrary and capricious standard they would have to prove. So that's what they'd have to do. They'd have to file a special action in Superior Court, and they'd have to allege that all of you acted arbitrary and capricious, or at least a majority of you did. So that would be the appellate court of what you passed, which is a high burden, very high burden for anybody to prove that.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Are you still presenting?
That is all I have on this. I'm just, I guess,
Because I have a feeling that Councilmember Struble has some questions, statements.
would that be for the next
That would
agenda
be for
item or
the next
this
one.
one?
Well, I
Next.
have a statement on this. This is,
Okay.
now that I've been offered the opportunity, and thank you. The title of this is Public Arts Commission. Take the definition of that, that would mean just public art, not private property art. And so that we have to take that into consideration. So, if on this, I think we need to, I don't have a problem with doing this commission, but I think we need to keep it as streamlined as possible and make the commission recommending to the council to make the final decision. As people say, you can always change it later on, but as we all know, and no offense to anybody in government, but once the government gets a hold of something, it's hard to change. And if we give too much latitude, it's hard to rein it back in and bring it back and take away the take away the approval process. And so if at some later date we want to, we can always give them that. So I would like to just have the commission be a recommending entity to the council for the public art. And we, obviously, from what I said before, I'm not in favor of doing anything mandating anything on private property. So I think that's a moot point, and that shouldn't be involved or even on this part of the motion.
Okay, if no one else, then this is a, Robin?
Clarify, please. Would you back up? You said what's the other part we need to decide?
No, that was,
The other part was just how we break out the membership.
Okay, so is the verbiage in red included in the ordinance at this point? Yes?
It is, so a
Yes,
determination
okay.
needs to be made on how
So the
you want
only
to
thing
go.
we're looking at is recommending versus non-recommending
Yes, and
within the motion.
yes, the motion should
Okay.
state, approve
Okay.
as is, except the following, and then take out the language you don't like.
Okay, that was
and the-
my question.
And the sections you don't like,
Uh-huh,
like the appellate one, for example, at the end.
Okay.
thank you.
Mayor, oh, I'm so sorry, I apologize.
We can
Are
come
we
back
ready
after
for
the
a
public
motion?
hearing.
On the,
You have it's a public.
Yeah, it's a public hearing, so let's,
okay.
this is a public hearing. Would anyone like to speak on this item?
it's not that important.
Hearing and seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and back for any more discussion before I ask for a motion.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'm halfway with Councilmember Struble. I think for the public, I think they should be a recommending body, but for the private, I don't see any reason why they couldn't be a deciding body.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Yeah, did I
You gonna
just-
chime in?
Did I say
Yeah,
something?
no,
Motion?
yeah, I mean, this, so, as I stated in the last meeting, as a business owner, as somebody who does operate a business, I want to make my building look good. I want to make sure that the people want to come there. I want to make sure that it's an appealing street, whatever that real estate is.
Urb appeal.
Urb appeal?
Street appeal. It has street appeal. But I, as a business owner, do not want the government telling me what art I am mandated to put on that property. This is the whole issue that I have. And there again, if we're gonna do it, there again, it's the commission that is gonna be telling me what to do in my property. And I understand there's people out there, there's other cities doing this and all that. If I was on that city council, I would have voted no too. But there again, we're getting into a fine line here where the government's telling private business owners what to do on their property. And we already have zoning laws, I understand that, for safety reasons, for health reasons, and everything like this. Art is not something that is needed. Art is something that is wanted. It's not something that is going to attract anybody. I'm sorry, it's not. I don't drive into a parking lot and say, wow, look at that art. I drive into a parking lot trying to find the sign to the store or the restaurant or whatever it might be. And we're getting into a really, where we're gonna be telling business owners what to put on their property and mandate it that they pay for it.
Krista?
Can we get some clarification on exactly what the difference is between the public and the private? Can we just to make sure that there's clear understanding for the council and for the public that may be listening, that may have similar thoughts or questions to Councilmember Struble, I apologize. Just, could we clarify the difference between private and public and what that private means? What does that mean? What does it look like?
Absolutely. Mayor, Councilmember Rizzi. I do want to first start with what it's titled as Public Art Commission. Public art is called that simply because it's visible to the public, not specifically public as a government entity. And so then the next part would go into art in a public place. More so defined in the next ordinance would be projects that are done through the city. So if we were to build a building, we have our piece of art out front here, our roundabout. We would like to put some art there. So those are public art in public places projects. The other art and private development would be specific for commercial development as well as what is proposed residential development that is 10 units or more, so we're talking apartment complexes. And then just asking or requiring that a certain dollar amount with a maximum of $100,000 be invested into public art on their project. The other option would be to put the funds in what we're calling an art, public art fund, so that those funds could then be used with city projects. If they couldn't put a piece of art on their project, then that money would go towards a city project.
Which would be what smaller businesses would be doing. They wouldn't be forced to do anything.
Exactly. They wouldn't have to put a piece
Yeah.
of art on their project.
They would be forced to pay the money to the city.
Right.
Well, I think that you have, it appears to me that there's a slight misinterpretation here. No way is an art council or a city council telling a business what they must put. What we're asking is for businesses to donate an X percent, whether we like the current percentage or we want a different one. And they are the ones that determine what that art will be, and they submit it to the art council, who then recommends it to the city council. We're not saying, okay, you just built that big building, well, you gotta put a big old cow out in front of it, because that's what we want there. We're not telling them that. You completely misrepresented that part.
And I have to disagree. First of all, the business owners will not be donating money, because donations mean that they have the free will to give to something or not to give something. This is a fee that will be charged to the project to the 1%, whatever it might be, whatever the cost is. They are going to be required to pay the 1%, either at the cost on the private property or to give to the city, not donate, but give to it. And if just for my mascot for my businesses is a rhino, a rhinoceros, okay? I would, if I had a piece of, when I build my property, when I build my building, I more than likely will decorate it with rhinos, whether through on the windows, whatever it might be. And we're getting into the legislation now as opposed to the commission formation.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
We
So,
look into that
but
too.
where I'm getting at from this is, if I want to put a rhinoceros statue in my parking lot, I have to submit those plans to the Parks or the Arts Commission, and either they will yay or nay it or recommend it to us. And if they don't like, and I'm just saying, they probably would like my rhinoceros.
I
But
wouldn't
if,
like your
but if they
rhinoceros. You
chose
can go
not
back.
to, they could decline my ability to choose to put my rhinoceros on my property.
But Mr. Struble,
So-
you have to get permission and approval for the type of building you build. You have to have approval for the exterior of your building.
Exactly.
You have to have approval for the height of your building. This is not any different.
Yes, it
You don't
is.
seem to have a problem with getting approval for those things.
No, those are for all zoning issues, for heights of buildings, for reasonableness, for the appearance, so that you don't put, for parking purposes and that type of stuff. Art, like I said before, art is a want. Art is not a need. We need to have the proper amount of lighting on our facilities. We need to have the proper height of the building. We need to have whatever the zoning issues are that we have. And so art is not a need to attract customers to the building.
I want
That's your opinion.
I know.
I want
Of
to,
course it is.
Okay.
I want to insert something in here also. We do, however, insist that they do landscaping.
Yep.
Do we need bushes and trees? They make our buildings more beautiful. When I first moved out here, you went to Kmart, there was a giant barren parking lot. It was great to zip across, but now, that was a pretty ugly parking lot. Now we make them look prettier, we make them look attractive. It makes the whole city look better. So we do force people to make their buildings look better.
Yeah.
Krista?
To me, it's similar to the, in the development fees that we have. We're talking about new construction, so we're not gonna go down Apache Trail and, start telling each individual business, this is for new construction. And I would agree with what Councilmember Barker and Mayor Surtee had expressed, in that with our landscape requirements, those are not, those are desires for the beautification of the city. They're not, they don't, it's not a safety issue that, we have to have trees, or, and so it's not, and so I would argue the same points that they made. It's about the beautification of the city, and it's about everybody contributing their part.
Okay, we have another one after this, which is
Yeah.
more in
Just
detail.
on follow-up on that one.
So,
Okay.
If I can, no, the landscaping is an issue. I agree with it, and I have a problem with the trees and everything, because if they block signage. But when we require in our zoning to have landscaping, they pay to have landscaping on their property. And they have to do that. It's not that then they have to turn around and give the money if they don't want to give the money to the city to do what the city wants to do with that money. And so I'm not sure that you're comparing apples and oranges or apples to apples on that particular issue, but you know, those are each of our own opinions, so.
True. Your Honor.
Yes.
I agree that I looked at this as part of our exteriors, of our buildings, of our public places, as well as our landscaping. We have choices in the landscaping, but it is a requirement. And I think this will enhance the community as a whole. I think we need to be the recommending body on both G1 and H2.
The council needs to be the recommending body?
The approval?
Yeah, the approval.
The deciding.
Approve.
The
Decide.
deciding
Recommend.
body.
Yeah, we don't have time to,
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
yes. Sorry,
okay.
all right.
Deciding.
Your Honor, would you like a motion on this?
Yes.
Thank you. I move that ordinance number 1478 be read by title only and the reading of the entire ordinance be waived.
Second.
Roll call.
They did.
Councilmember Schroeder,
What?
Oh,
I'm just, are we voting
I
to
take
both
it.
of them?
Just
Which
leave it
one,
here.
but which one are we deciding?
Setting up the commission.
That's
Haven't
what
yet.
was
Mr.
the
Mayor,
motion.
Mr. Mayor, can I interrupt for a second?
Yes,
Yeah.
We
Did you
didn't do
close the public hearing?
I believe I
No.
did. Did I not?
City clerk, I don't, did he?
I believe you did.
He did,
Oh,
okay.
good.
Yeah. Try to keep up.
Sorry.
Okay. All right,
I'm at 5 cents a word,
right.
not $10.
okay.
Yes.
Yes.
But may I ask clarification of the city attorney? Are they making recommendations on G1 and H2 because it wasn't in the motion?
Not until after you have read
Just,
Right
the
now, it's
ordinance.
titled only, I believe.
That will
Okay.
be
Thank you.
next. Thank you for asking.
With roll call, Councilmember Schroeder,
Yes.
Councilmember Barker,
Yes.
Councilmember Evans,
Yes.
Councilmember Struble,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wilson,
Tempted to say no, but yes.
Councilmember Rizzi.
Yes.
Mayor Surtee.
Yes.
Unanimous, Your Honor.
I just didn't want to make her read the whole thing.
That's what I said. I'm tempted just to do it.
Ordinance number 1478, an ordinance of the mayor and city council of the city of Apache Junction, Arizona, amending Apache Junction City Code, Volume 1, Chapter 2, Mayor, Council, and appointed boards and commissions by creating new Article 2-9, Public Art Commission, repealing any conflicting provisions, providing for severability, and establishing an effective date.
Your Honor,
Yes.
I move that ordinance number 1478 as read by the city clerk be approved and adopted with the following amendments, that the city council act as the deciding body, therefore the commission will be the recommending body for art projects relating to art in public places, and that the board serve as the recommending body for art projects relating to art in the private development.
Second.
Roll call.
Councilmember Evans,
Yes.
Councilmember Rizzi,
Yes.
Councilmember Struble,
I get to vote no because I don't agree with the private part of it.
Vice Mayor Wilson,
Yes.
Councilmember Barker,
Yes.
Councilmember Schroeder,
Yes.
Mayor Surtee.
Yes.
6-1, Your Honor. Motion passes.
Presentation, discussion, public hearing, and consideration of Resolution 1924, amendments to City Code. Larry or Heather, are you going to do this one as well?
Okay, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. This second item is changes to our code that puts in place the public art the art in public and private development program. So based on some previous discussions, there was concern with how the first section was written, where it says the amount is not less than 1%, and we're proposing that it says equal to 1%. The reason being is that for smaller projects, based upon their square footage, then the percentage is decreased as seen in 1A. We also propose that the number 1 is written out to be 1%, and then in parentheses, 1%. So it's a little bit more clerical. Everything else, we've updated and addressed in the document as previously discussed. Some more clerical things that were not worthy, I guess, of discussing.
Any discussion?
Yes. I'm using the draft.
Okay.
Okay. I am curious. On page 6, D is really convoluted. It says non-eligible public art and costs, including business logo. I mean, punctuation number 1 kills it. But it sounds like, as you read through it, that all the things that are listed are non-eligible, when in fact they are eligible. If you look on page 11, you'll see that a lot of these things are eligible. It's just really convoluted and confusing to the absolute max.
Thank you. Mayor, Councilmember Barker, I think the distinction between the two is if there is an artistic value to it or an artistic expression within it, like just a regular metal bench that you can go to the store and buy is not art. But if you take an artist and they fabricate a bench out of, whatever, metal and have their own personal spin on it, then it could be considered art.
Okay, but that's not what I'm asking.
Okay.
Okay. It says non-eligible public art. And costs, all right? Which I presume are non-eligible costs, correct? Is that a correct
Yes.
interpretation of those first 4 or 5 words?
Yes.
Because it was pretty interesting. And then you go down to landscaping and services and utilities necessary to operate art, maintenance costs, architecture fees, et cetera, and those are all covered on page 11 as costs. So if you want to say if these on page 6 are not designed by an artist, you need to say it. I mean, it says other than an artist commissioned in the middle, but then it has a semicolon, which infers that that's a different thought now.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's
The
fine.
English teacher's coming out.
Hey.
Hi.
Okay.
I was terribly, terribly confused when I read it the first 6 times. Also on page 9, it says on 3, at the top of page 9, it says replacement of missing or damaged public art is required, right? And then it gives unless certain things happen. But then in D, it says in the event that any art replaced in development as a result of this section is removed or destroyed, the owner of development shall replace it, and it doesn't say except. So is this a whole different scenario? Did I miss the new scenario there?
Yeah, that the 3, that is if, well,
Oh, goody, you had to read it
Yeah.
too. I'm so
I do.
glad.
Sorry.
No, it makes me feel better that I,
Okay, so C is talking about maintaining it. So then C3 is maybe just a component of it, like if a piece went missing or it was
right?
whatever, slightly damaged, whereas D is if they're going to completely remove it. So, that's
Doesn't
more,
say that they're gonna remove it, it just says destroy to remove. Remember the quail? Think about the quail. It was destroyed. The city
Yes.
didn't destroy it, So I think it needs to be fleshed out a little bit, clarified just a little bit, just enough that, in other words, somebody's gonna come in and they're gonna say, what do you mean? It says here that if I maintain this thing and somebody destroyed it, I don't have to do anything, and yet it says here I do have to do something, so.
We could alleviate that whole problem by just deleting the whole section with
But I
private.
don't want to, because my opinion is that art is important. Thank you.
I'm just saying.
Good evening, council, mayor. I think D relates to, again, we want it to be permanent, but if for some unforeseen reason that the art is destroyed, D 1 and 2 basically make you have to replace it. So if the developers say, we want them to maintain it, but if some, I hate to say, a car hits the Rhino,
Right.
then
But-
they have to replace it within 180 days.
But
That's
in
kind of what
3
D,
right above, it says that if a car hits the Rhino and it was properly maintained prior to that, that they don't have to replace it.
it says is required. Replacement of missing or damaged public art is required.
Unless the owner or developer provides documentation that shows the art was properly maintained. So somebody's car hitting that Rhino doesn't have anything to do with that
But I
owner's
think it's
maintenance.
different if something is missing or damaged versus removed or destroyed. Those are two totally different concepts. If something is gone, then it's removed, or if it's destroyed, I think.
That seems to be the same.
But to me, destroyed has a connotation of it's totally lost for public value. Different than missing or damaged. Anyway,
If the Rhino lost his ear, if he lost his ear,
Right.
okay?
yes.
It's
What-
missing.
Yes.
It's
Part of it.
missing,
It's the
and he
part
of it.
maintained it. He doesn't have to replace that ear.
So,
Okay?
so a very real example is the Kachina, right? Didn't we have something fall off the
Yeah, the
Kachina?
headdress.
So that's
Headdress
where
fell down.
this first part would apply. Something fell off, it needs to be replaced, it needs to be painted, it needs to be repaired. The second one is if the Kachina all of a sudden disappeared, it was stolen one night.
But that's not their fault.
No, but all this,
No, we're just
all
saying-
this is still anticipated to come under the commission. So this is kind of the operational piece in the zoning code, but certainly the commission is going to be involved and work with the property owner that installed the art, or whether it was
So
public.
if a piece is missing, needs repair, you have, according to C3,
I guess
Unless you
what
can
I
show-
guess what I'm seeing is you're making it way too hard.
And perhaps, yeah.
Too many words that repeat and repeat and repeat, so that you read this through, it becomes so ambiguous simply because of the repetition of phraseology, et cetera. I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying it's one more thing, and then I'll shut up here. One other thing, you have in one spot, and I can't remember exactly where, that there's a 2-year warranty period. And then it appears possible that a private person could say, here, you guys, I want to give the art to the city, correct? Okay, now, it says that the property owner has to maintain in perpetuity that art. If they convey it to the city, do they still have to maintain it? And why in the world would I give it to the city if I'm still gonna have to maintain the sucker? Rhino or not, I'm not taking care of him anymore.
Right. So that one is, so they have their art, and at some point, you know,
2
for
years,
whatever
it says-
reason.
It says after 2 years. it
Right.
says.
So at some point, if they did want to convey it over to the city for whatever reason, we would have to ensure that over the 2-year period of time that they maintained it, that it's in good condition, then we would take it over an ownership and we would
And
maintain
they
it.
would not have anything more to do with it.
Correct.
Your rhino is free.
It's
Okay.
free.
So, and again, that would be then the commission, and based on your recommendation, they
Right.
would recommend to the council that
Right.
we do want to accept or not accept this item.
Okay, those were the curious parts I had. I know it's,
So they wouldn't be responsible for it anymore.
no.
Once it's conveyed over to the city, they would not.
Okay. This is a public hearing. Would anyone like to speak on this item? Hearing and seeing none, I'll close the public hearing.
I have another, one more thing, and this one is, I'm going to be on the losing end, or whatever you want to call it on this one. But I really think, the private side of it, I've already voiced my opinion on this, when I submitted a narrative and everything for this, there's something we really need to talk about. I can understand I'm going to lose on the private. But when if we have a nonprofit or a church going to build a property in here, they fall under this ordinance also. And we are going to, however you want to say it, they're going to submit their art to this commission who is going to recommend it to us for approval, whatever it might be. But especially, churches, I don't think we should be telling churches what to put in art anyway, just like businesses. But on nonprofits, we are going to be requiring them to spend donated money to them to put art that is not needed, that they could be using that money to service their clients. And I think if I don't get anything else done here, if we could, I'm being very serious about this one. If we could get the nonprofit and churches deleted from the requirement to have money taken from them that are going to be servicing our citizens that, and I'm going to throw this in here, that they come to us as a city council and ask us to give them money to service the citizens, it just seems kind of, I used that word last time, I'm not going to say it again, but it just seems, why require them to do that when they come to ask us for money? And they're not going to be able to use that money that we are requiring them to either put art on or give the city that money that they could be using to provide suicide prevention. They could be providing homeless issues. They could be providing food to the community. They could be providing mental health services. They could be providing services to the abused, whether it's all across everything. So in all seriousness, I mean, I understand that that the private side of it, but we really need to think about requiring our nonprofits and churches to do that. If I can't do anything else, I would like to have at least that part of it stricken from this. Krista?
Is there, Joel, question for you, is there anything that would cause us to get in legal hot water by differentiating between them? By saying this group doesn't have to in their new development, but this group does?
Mayor and members of the council, there's a federal law called the Religious Land Use Act and Institutionalized Person Act. I think that's what it's called. And that would allow a church or a charitable organization, it's more of a religious institute, to say, what you're doing, city, is too much of a burden on our organization. And they would have to prove it. So that would be one federal statute that does apply. But as for accepting out a church, I don't think that would be so much of an equal protection or a due process issue. I think you can do that.
What about the nonprofits?
Nonprofits is a probably, that's a harder question because it depends what their purpose is. So that could be a problem, but it's hard to say, to really give you a thesis on that in 2 minutes.
And so, just to clarify again, we're talking about new development. We're not talking about CAFA who leases a building or just calling them. We have to say, okay, now you're going to have to put this piece. We're talking about new development, new buildings, things that are being constructed.
New building.
And
exactly.
So we could get in hot water and challenged if we were to single out nonprofits, but probably not with churches. That's what I heard.
Probably not for religious institutions, because they have that ability to make the same argument under the federal law that would apply to cities and towns.
May I respond to that? We've already put in that we will, that the residential properties have, correct me if I'm wrong, 10 units or more?
Yes.
Correct? So if if I go out and build a 9-plex, I'm not gonna be required to put art or pay for the art to the city, correct?
Correct.
So we've already put in exemptions in here for businesses that don't have to do it. And yes, it is only for new builds, but we do have some nonprofits that will be building. I know of one that would like to build a building, and it would take money away from serving abused citizens. And I don't, I would rather not require them and have somebody challenge us than to require them and have somebody challenge then they would have to spend the money that could be used to provide services to the citizens to fight us because they don't want to be mandated to pay the
Your
fees.
Honor.
Yes,
As someone who was involved in a nonprofit and a new building, what we spent to build Mountain Health and Wellness and the architectural design that went into it did not take away from any of the programs. It was a different, we didn't eliminate things because it was a nonprofit, because it still wanted to have a nice appearance. It wanted to have a friendly, welcoming building. Art adds to that. As far as churches, you know, how does it, you know the house up on Mining Camp that has that one church window, Joel? It was up closer to where the restaurant was, and he had his taxes that he was a church, and if you stopped there, he'd pray with you, but he didn't have services, but he didn't pay taxes. So how would somebody like that, if we excluded churches out of it?
I don't know the circumstances of that particular charitable organization, if it was one. You know, Mr. Volkmer's here, and I think this is a county issue. And maybe that, no, I'm just kidding, I don't want to do that.
He's like, don't get me in the middle.
But I think,
I mean, if we excluded them, it would have to include not necessarily legitimate churches.
well, they'd have to have probably a charitable organizational registration with the IRS, 501c3. So, I mean, that's a tough question. I don't know the answer to that, except that if you start making a lot of exceptions for the different kind of purpose of a charitable organization, you will get into trouble.
Yeah. And they have landscape requirements also, do they not, when they build?
Yes.
I understand that, but those are, and I have a problem, I'll be honest with you, some of the landscaping that we require, so, anyway.
Well, if I can,
You said my point.
there was a RELUPIA, that's the Religious Land Use Act issue, probably about, and Rudy's not here, but he can confirm it, but it was probably 16, 17 years ago, involving a particular church on a steeple. And their allegation was, hey, that interferes with our religious use and our religious beliefs. City, don't require that. Don't make us make it shorter. And that was the issue with that one. And I think the city, they brought down some Salt Lake City people who are attorneys, and they pretty much argued the case in front of the council, and the council said, you know what, you're right, we're going to let you have your 40-foot steeple or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But just back down to the nonprofit, I mean, that's an easy one, because you have to get permission from the IRS to be deemed as a nonprofit. And I know, believe me, I work with them, there's some nonprofits out there that anyway. But you have to have that designation. It's just not that you just can't go up to the city and say, hey, I'm a nonprofit. You have to actually prove it. Just like when I submit to do an event here at the city, to the city clerk, and I want to do it through my foundation, should I say what it is, because it includes a rhino, I have to provide to them the letter from the IRS stating that I'm a nonprofit. I mean, so that is, we're not exempting anybody who doesn't already have the designation of nonprofit through the federal government.
Your Honor.
Yes.
So I see Councilmember Struvel's point. Now, in today's building, like Councilmember Everett was saying, the architecture to make it look nice, these nonprofits aren't putting up 4 walls and some cubicle. They're probably pretty lavish buildings, and they'd be lucky to get one done under $750,000. I mean, I don't feel $7,000 to $10,000 to be put into some artwork in front of the building or put back into the city fund is too much to ask. I mean, it's not I don't believe they're coming in with, $25,000 and putting up a building. Even with churches. I mean, churches are pretty lavish, and they cost a lot of money to build.
And might I add to that, projects that are under 50,000 wouldn't be charged anyway.
True, right. So if
Part of this. So, yeah. I too understand your point, Councilmember Struvel, but if an organization has enough money to build this, they have enough to add art.
Krista.
I also own a business, so.
And most of us up here do.
My only comment was going off of my question to Joel, was that it sounds like it's being recommended to exclude the churches, but not the nonprofits? Did I understand that correctly, or am I misunderstanding?
I think if they're charitable organizations, so 501c3, then I think you can.
Okay.
If I could, Your Honor, I would think a church, this doesn't say you can't put up something that is religious, that is a piece of art for your denomination.
Yeah.
So so I kind of get where you're going. I don't know. Joel's the attorney on Relupia and all that, but churches do have to follow zoning. This is a zoning regulation, so I do think a church can put something that's meaningful to their faith or congregation group, and it might enhance the project. So nonprofits might be the same way, is that, if there's something that's of art that deals with CAFA or something like that is symbolic to theirs, hopefully they would want to do that. Again, but in the end, you're going to be making the vote, so that's just my 2 cents.
See, the operative word
like Larry, so let's say, could like a church integrate art into maybe their marquee, and so that is kind of a dual purpose?
Yeah, they can embed it into the architecture of the building or a corner of the building. It could be part of landscape. It has to be visible to the public, so it still has to meet that criteria, and accessible to the public, just like their building is. So yes, they could build it into perhaps their signage or a garden area, however that would be.
And I'm beating a dead horse here.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. And I don't care if we stay here till 12 o'clock if I talk. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. But the operative word you said there, Larry, was the church might want to do that. And we are requiring them to do it.
They have to provide art, but what the art is, that's really up to them to propose.
It's just, it's a fine line as to between want and need.
So,
And then, anyway, I'm done.
Okay.
Can I ask one question? Is a hospital nonprofit? Are there nonprofit hospitals?
Yes, some are for-profit and some are non-profit.
Yeah, so you could have a huge hospital build, and because they're nonprofit, they wouldn't be required to do anything.
Sure, there's mental health centers that are nonprofits.
Yes, there
And there's
are.
some mental health centers that are not, or are for-profit.
And I don't know all of them.
No, I know that.
So we're all,
Personally.
Okay.
while we're all up here stating that who's businessman or not, you guys all rent your buildings. I own my building. I bought one of the ugliest buildings in the whole East Valley, and I put 2 murals on it, and I spent a lot of money on those murals, and it helps my building, and people love to look at them. So
Certainly
that's a
does.
perfect example of how art can help to make something more interesting, so.
And you chose to do it.
And Mr. Mayor, with all this conversation, I mean, can we open it back up to the public? Maybe there's someone that has an opinion.
We still have one more discussion after this, right? Or not? Is this the,
I thought this was it.
We do,
Okay.
that's the direction to staff one.
Yeah,
So
and-
number 10 and 11 are related,
Oh.
so that would be the public hearing. I did want to address Councilmember Barker's, I do agree it could be written much better, but I think we believe as staff that subparagraph D on page 6 and then the reference on page 11 for eligible costs, I think we know what the difference is.
But will the person who wants to do this know the difference?
Well, yes, there's going to be an educational piece to this, and again, the Arts Commission is going to be in this as well.
Okay.
And then also, I think similarly, your point about on page 9, 3, and then parent D about the missing or damaged versus removed or destroyed, I think we feel comfortable with what we, how our interpretation of it is.
I know you feel comfortable.
Right.
My comfort level is due to what the user is gonna feel.
Sure.
The person who decides to develop a building, who becomes part of this, wants to read this, that person has to be comfortable. Your comfort makes no difference at all
No,
when it comes
I
to the
understand. I'm just saying,
customer.
as this was drafted, we could have spent a lot more time on drafting this. We could have set up a whole committee to spend a year on it, but we ended up taking several cities' ordinances and putting it all together, but that
wasn't
doesn't mean, no, I'm
the
not,
point.
no, correct.
I mean,
I'm just saying,
excuses. All I'm saying is you could clarify that. You could clarify it
could.
with 1 or 2 words. That's all you'd need.
Well, there might be just some discussion on how to clarify it, so I would suggest if you're gonna do that, or give staff the ability to do that, to come back with another draft, and don't do it tonight, because it's
Oh,
too difficult.
Lord, I'd rather not
Well,
go
if,
through this again.
I would not, these types of amendments that are done at the last minute.
it is
are-
understandable as it is. It's just confusing, so it
Yeah.
could work tonight.
Confusing.
Yes. Okay, Robert thought that we should open up the public hearing again. I'll do that really quickly. I'll open up the public hearing if anyone would like to speak on this item.
Mayor, members of council, Braden Biggs, community member here in Apache Junction. I've sat through all of the planning and zoning discussions on this. I've looked through this draft numerous times. I'm equally as confused as you guys in certain areas. I want to point out back to the nonprofit standpoint. As somebody who works for a nonprofit, I definitely understand that concern, but there are 29 different IRS classifications of nonprofit. So I think it's a little bit different for a 501c3 versus a 501c6, which is like a Pinal Partnership, CAG, any of those guys. So I think that that's one thing to take a look at. And if you can delineate between those, then I would agree that it should be something that should be done. The same with faith-based organizations. The other piece to that is in looking at these codes, I still don't 100% like the equal to 1%. I don't think we should require our businesses to do it. But I will point out and say that even on the private property, they have the opportunity to donate to the fund for the city. So they're not required to necessarily put something on their property as they might be with landscaping or anything like that. I know it's not favorable, but I would suggest bringing this back to staff and bringing this back to council once this is ironed out more. It's very interesting discussion, and I mean, I've looked forward to this the entire time and really happy to see where we're at with this, but would like to see this more fully developed. That doesn't mean, at least to my understanding, that we can't move forward with the establishment of the commission and work on the regulation piece as we grow through that. It's my understanding the commission won't even be seated until 2020 to begin with. So that's just my opinion, but definitely take that under consideration. Thank you all.
Would anyone else like to speak? Hearing and seeing none, I'll close the public hearing again.
Just to reiterate, it's mandated that the 1%, if the business owner who is building a property chooses not to put art on their property of whatever fashion that art might be, they are mandated to pay 1%, not donate, because donate, we'd have to go to a Supreme Court Justice Roberts, would it be? He might have to determine whether it's a tax or a fee, but it's not a donation. They are required to give the money. They don't have the choice.
Just like landscaping. So I want to make a point. Everybody loves our fries, and it's wonderful that we have it, and we're all proud of it. When I get criticism of it, it's, why did you build such a bland fries? You had this opportunity to make a big, awesome, wonderful Western-themed or mountain-themed business, and we didn't. And they could have afforded it. So we were so tickled to get it that we didn't. And so now we have that forever. Here's a chance to make these buildings, much more attractive. And Mr. Struble, it's like you want to live in Sparta, where they just had plain, no architecture, and nobody really remembers. That city doesn't even exist, but everybody still remembers Athens with all of their beautiful art, and it still exists. So I would like to be more like Athens than Sparta. Unless I'm in a war, then I want to be with Sparta. Any more discussion?
I don't even know how to respond to that one, because there again, anyway, yeah, that's a.
Are we ready to?
Mr. Surdy, that's not even a point.
Ask for a motion.
Yeah, which one are we on?
We're on 10.
Number 10.
We're 10?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
After
Sorry,
city clerk
I
pay.
got sidetracked. Okay, you asked for a motion?
Yes.
I'll make it. I move that resolution number 19-24, a resolution of the mayor and the city council of the city of Apache Junction, Arizona, declaring as a public record that certain document entitled 2019 Amendments to the Apache Junction City Code, Volume 2, Land Development Code, Chapter 1, Zoning Ordinance, Article 1 through 13, Design Standards, Section 1 through 13-4, Art in Public and Private Developments be approved.
Second.
Roll call.
Vice Mayor Wilson?
Okay, I've been listening to all this and going on it, and I have been torn from the two sides, but I'm going to vote yes.
Councilmember Barker?
Yes.
Councilmember Rizzi?
Yes.
Councilmember Schroeder?
Yes.
Councilmember Struble?
Can I vote 8 times? No.
Councilmember Evans?
Yes.
Mayor Surdy?
Yes.
6-1, Your Honor. Motion passes.
Number 11, presentation, discussion, public hearing on ordinance number 1477. Is this one, Larry?
This is the ordinance.
Presented, Your Honor,
Yeah.
so
Okay.
I don't know if you were combining the public hearings. You could certainly open it up again
right.
if you'd like.
Is there any more discussion among council? This is a public hearing. Does anyone like to speak on this item? Hearing and seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. And if there's no discussion, I'll ask for another motion.
Your Honor,
Yes.
I move that ordinance number 1477 be read by title only, and the reading of the entire ordinance be waived.
Second.
Roll call.
Councilmember Schroeder?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wilson?
Yes.
Councilmember Barker?
Yes.
Councilmember Evans?
Yes.
Councilmember Rizzi?
Yes.
Councilmember Struble?
Yes.
Mayor Surdy?
Yes.
Unanimous, Your Honor.
Thought you were going to say no.
Ordinance number 1477, an ordinance of the mayor and city council of the city of Apache Junction, Arizona, amending Apache Junction City Code Volume 2, Land Development Code by adopting by reference new sections 1-13-4, Art in Public and Private Developments, repealing any conflicting provisions, providing for severability, providing for penalties, and establishing an effective date.
Your Honor,
Yes.
I move that ordinance number 1477 is read by the city clerk be approved and adopted with the following amendments. Actually, we didn't have any amendments to my knowledge, so that it just be approved.
Second.
Roll call.
Councilmember Barker?
Yes.
Councilmember Struble?
No.
Councilmember Evans?
Yes.
Councilmember Rizzi?
Yes.
Councilmember Schroeder?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wilson?
Yes.
Mayor Surtee?
Yes.
6-1, motion passes, Your Honor.
Direction to staff on Volume 1, Chapter 4, fees. Larry.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. This is similar to a presentation. I did try to shorten it up from a couple weeks ago. Did I hit the page down? Okay, so tonight, in order to make what you just did work, we have to post proposed fees on the website for 60 days. So this was here a couple weeks ago. There was a little bit, and again, we apologize, maybe it shouldn't have been on direction to staff a couple weeks ago, but tonight is the night to have it on direction to staff. So one, our proposed fees for public art, they're essentially written the same way as the ordinance that you just adopted. We also wanted to, as long as we're doing this and posting things on the website, we wanted to have a different approach of how we do the zoning fees for the legal advertising. And then there were some cleanup things that we talked about that Dave presented on building permits and grading. So this is essentially what you talked about. This applies to private projects, multifamily projects. And again, recall that we did, what's in yellow there is the sliding scale for smaller developments. So it's not every project is 1%. It's either 0.25 or 0.5. Again, if it's over 10,000 square feet, it's 1%. Again, this is new construction, but it also applies to renovations over 50%. So a lot of our codes are written such that when you go over 50%, then an ordinance will kick in. And then as Heather mentioned, for public CIP capital improvement projects, if the value of the project is over $50,000, but not like a road resurfacing type project. So those would be city-funded public art. Then the legal advertising fees. So this was mentioned last time, is that we have this where when you do a rezoning, you pay your application fee, you put this $500 deposit, then we have 3 departments working to give you your $400 back. So we said, well, rather than have that cost, can we just come up with a flat fee? So we're proposing that a conditional use permit, because we have to publish more in the paper. A board of adjustment, this is slightly different than what you saw a couple weeks ago. I had that as $300, I believe. For example, we do have cases where we do have to bring in an outside attorney. I think Joel has said that this person is not a $10 word attorney, but we actually get them for $150, but there's a 4-hour call out. So when someone does a certain type of appeal, there is the $100 advertising fee, but we're still not gonna make or break even, if that's our goal, to pay for the stenographer and the third-party attorney. This gets us closer to at least having that cost absorbed by the applicant. General plan amendment, again, it was mentioned a couple weeks ago. We looked at 3 years worth of data. What are we actually paying the Arizona Republic, or the one that we put the ads in? So we're just suggesting that this is a lot simpler than having 3 departments trying to figure out how much is in the escrow and when the bill comes and all that. So that's that. Now this is, I went through these with Dave. Dave couldn't be here tonight. These are, some of them are clarifications, some are just a couple things we missed. So for example, right now on a park model, if you pay for the park model set, that's one fee. If you include the awning, if you will, that's all in the same fee. But if you do it at 2 different times, then there's 2 different fees. That's really what the first one does. The same thing where it says mobile home awning, not part of original set. So again, if you apply for a set permit and includes the awning, it's all one charge. If you do it later, it's a separate charge. The mobile home remodeling repair. Again, this was a clarification that one of the industry brought to our attention. So essentially, it's going to be the same fee as a residential interior remodel. If you want to remodel the interior of your manufactured home, we're not going to do some complicated formula based on the square footage, if it's greater or less than 100 square feet. The roof, commercial roof, one of the first roofs that we did, we realized that the the fee ended up being about 24 cents a square foot. We're actually reducing it to 5 cents a square foot through the formula. So you'd have to go to the valuation table. So you look at that type of construction, and it ends up being, even though it says 10% of the value table, it ends up reducing it from 24 cents a square foot down to 5 cents a square, a little less than 5 cents a square foot. So that's what the commercial roof repair. For the HVAC, this is a clarification. So we had a fee for a traditional roof-mounted air conditioner. So what we didn't have was anything for a mini split. Those are the condensing units that are on the ground. This actually has that, so at least it clarifies that it's for any kind of air conditioner. It includes all three types, whether it's on the roof or on the ground, or whether it's a mini split on the ground. And then Dave had to teach me what IMC is, but that is the International Mechanical Code. So again, we didn't have anything in there. For example, a nail salon has to have certain air exchanges and things like that. So we didn't have a permit in there if you have to have a certain type of air handler that dealt with certain types of air. The next page deals with, we had fee in there for gas line if you're replacing your gas line, but we didn't have anything for regular water service or sewer service. So that's what that clarifies, and the fees are the same as they were for the gas. And then the same thing for commercial. We did not have, there was that language in there for the, this is really a plumbing permit. It says not on a slab. So we deleted that. That was confusing to people. So this is essentially a remodel where you relocate a shower, a toilet, or move it. Then the last one was with the grading permit. It's simply fixed a typo, and then if you'll see the very bottom, we're just inserting the language that is the same up here so that people know that it includes the plan review. And then, again, finally, no one is asking to adopt these tonight. This is not really for adoption, you're allowing us to post these on the city website for 60 days. It is September 17th. They would be posted till November 17th. We run into Thanksgiving, so this probably would come back in December. So direction to staff would be to post these. You can certainly alter them, change them, at the time we bring back an ordinance, or if you have any suggestions tonight, but we're looking for direction to really get in, make the arts fees, move them forward, and the legal ads, and then some of these cleanup items for the building code. And I can answer any questions.
Any questions? Looks like no.
Looks like we're questioned out.
So, this is for motion direction to staff.
Your Honor,
Yes.
I move that the following direction be given to staff regarding the proposed revisions to Apache Junction City Code, Volume 1, Chapter 4, fees pertaining to proposed fees for publicly accessible art in private developments, revisions to fees for legal advertisements for planning and zoning cases, and amendments to certain building permit fees and grading permit fees.
Second.
Roll call.
Councilmember Schroeder,
Yes.
Councilmember Barker,
Yes.
Councilmember Evans,
Yes.
Councilmember Struble,
No.
Vice Mayor Wilson,
Yes.
Councilmember Rizzi,
Yes.
Mayor Surtee.
Yes.
Unanimous, or 6-1, Your Honor, motion passes.
Do we have a motion on upcoming council dates?
Your Honor, I move that an executive session at 6 p.m. and a work session at 7 p.m. be held on Monday, September 30th, 2019, and an executive session at 6 p.m. and a work session at 7 p.m. be held on Tuesday, October 1st, 2019, in the City Council Conference Room, respectively.
Second.
Roll call.
Councilmember Rizzi,
Yes.
Councilmember Evans,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wilson,
Yes.
Councilmember Barker,
Yes.
Councilmember Struble,
Yes.
Councilmember Schroeder,
Yes.
Mayor Surtee.
Yes.
Unanimous, Your Honor.
It looks like we have one call to the public. This is a time to express requests, communications. You have a 3-minute time limit, and we have Terry Reynolds. We need your address.
My name is Terry Reynolds. I live at 1121 South Lothar Drive. I did send a email to each of you council members except for the Mayor Surdy, and I appreciate Councilwoman Evans thanking me for that email. I'm here to talk about the PW 2019-41 solid waste recycling and disposal service contract that has been ongoing. In the motion that was presented on August 6th council meeting, the motion itself read, alternative bid of solid waste pickup twice weekly with an option for residents to contract for recycling service for an additional fee. The wording of that is the contract the City of Apache Junction for twice weekly pickup. Then the residents would have the option to contract separately for recycling services at an additional fee. Then isn't in effect saying the residents would be entering into a separate contract for the recycling services and thereby not be subject to the terms and limitations negotiated into the base contract for twice weekly pickup. This is how the motion was worded exactly and approved. To me, that means that the base fee would be locked in under your contract, but if I've got to go and do my own contract, that means the $8 fee could go up at whatever rate, at whatever time would be with Allied, between Allied and myself. So I have no guarantees. Doesn't work for me. Then it goes on, this has been going on since May of 2018. Not a lot happened as far as I can tell between May of 2018 and June of 2019. What kind of town meetings, surveys, and other contact has been made between the residents who are going to ultimately pay for this contract and the council members, staff, or whatever? The transparency on this RFP is non-existent. The technical evaluation done by 5 staff members is not available. It's just, this whole process seems to be quite non-transparent and leaves a lot to be non-desirable. I'm about done with my time, unfortunately, but I would ask that all you council members look at my email.
Thank you. Would anyone care to respond? If no one would care to respond, then we will be adjourned.